Right here, I'm Toya Singh. Let's take a look at all of the headlines. All right, first up, as we said earlier, are screens helping or hurting our students? Is tech-free education smart, or is it actually a step backwards? We're taking a look at this and more right here on the show today with experts. That's our first story. After that, we are sitting down with Mehrotra. You may not know his name, but he heads Dune18L. Dune18L is the company that is behind all of the success that Dune 2 is seeing with its visuals. It's not just that, they've also done a number of famous films in the past too: Blade Runner, Ex Machina and Brahmastra. And Mehrotra speaks to us about what it takes to build a visual effects company and why they won big at the 97th Academy Awards. The red carpet roundup, the best dressed yesterday. So we aren't done bringing you Oscars coverage. We'll also be talking about some of the fashion that you saw. And then, of course, we take you on the roads. Mercedes-Benz E450 LWB is put to the test. Is it the understated sleeper, the smart buyers AMG? We're going to take a look at that and more right here on the show. And then India versus Australia, the semi-final showdown. India's knockout jinx. Can they break free? That's obviously the big question. And we're going to take a look at it right here on the show. All right, first up, as we promised, India's classrooms are at a crossroads. On one side, technology is being pushed as the ultimate tool for learning. So you have smart boards, AI-driven assessments, digital textbooks, and even coding from primary school. The idea being that tech is obviously the reality of students' everyday lives. But on the other hand, a growing number of schools and educators are actually pulling the plug. They're removing devices, they're banning laptops, and we're seeing a return to handwritten notes and chalkboards. Are tech-free classrooms making students smarter, or are they setting them back? And can we actually even approach tech as one big whole, or does there need to be a separation between communication devices, for example, and learning devices? If we take a look at Delhi, schools here have issued a government advisory prohibiting mobile phone use inside classrooms. They've essentially cited distractions, failing academic engagements as some of the reasons. And now you're actually seeing other states. So Gujarat, for example, looking at similar restrictions. Some private schools in our country, especially those modeled on the Waldorf education system, they've long kept technology out of the classroom. That's been a crucial part of their philosophy. They've argued that young minds learn best through direct interaction, so not through screens. But is this approach practical in this current age, where access to quality education is already uneven? And as 40% of students in India in particular have never used technology for learning, is this the right question to ask? The digital divide is real. Rural schools sometimes struggle with unreliable electricity. So this entire question of functioning smart boards, ye sab dur ki baatein hain. But in urban centers, it seems like the opposite problem exists. Children are drowning in screens, leading some schools to actually enforce strict device bans. When they go home, a phone is given to them. You know, they're busy on the phone looking at videos, and they don't get enough off-screen time. Now, research suggests that students who take notes by hand actually remember information better than those who type. Teachers who've switched to tech-free classrooms sometimes report increased class participation and improved attention spans. Is that it? Well, digital learning is deeply embedded in global education systems, and in India, as we said earlier, it may democratize access. Coding, digital literacy, AI tools, this is in some ways just the language of the future. Can students afford to keep away from tech in schools? That's what we're going to be taking a look at today. We wanted to give you all of that context, all of those numbers right there, just for you to fully understand this story. But now we're going to go over to our guests just to understand this in depth, because we can't tell you what the classroom experience is like, but the two educators who join us in just a few seconds can. Now, one believes that technology is essential for modern education. The other argues that screens, and we'll talk about what kind of screens in just a second, but the other argues that screens could be doing more harm than good. Now, before we go ahead, we do want to thank India's international movement to unite nations. They've helped us put together panels exactly like this in the last few days. They've helped help us put together this panel too. Let's go over very quickly to our guests. So we have with us Florina Fernandez. She's the principal of Ramnivas Bajaj English High School. It's located in Mumbai. She's going to be talking to us in just a second. We also have with us Gurmeher Singh Chawla. He's the director of the Arpa River Valley International School in Bilaspur. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
The intro to our audiences was actually quite a mouthful. We were, sharing all of this data with them. But the reality you will tell us in just a few seconds from now. Florina, if we could actually come over to you first just to understand a little bit more in terms of your experience. Your school is located in Mumbai. I do want to give our audiences that context. It's an urban location. And
Right.
I just want to understand from you, those who speak in favor of education, classrooms that need technology, they say that, tech is needed. Are they talking about all tech? We need to start there. Or are they saying different kinds of tech? Big yes, different kinds of techs, it's a no. Ramnivas, we'll just go over very quickly to Florina first.
Well, if you look at it, education must be a reflection of how we live our lives.
Yes.
So, if in all spheres of life we have embraced technology full on, then why should education be left behind?
Right.
So, I believe technology is something, and different kinds of technology is the best way to bring about a lot of changes, positive changes in education, especially if you look at it, different kinds of assessments, differentiated teaching, even learning strategies. So you use technology to enhance the entire teaching learning progress. And that is what, for me, is technology in education.
I love that. And Florina, I appreciate that you've kind of given us an overview of how you think. First, Florina, we're going to ask you a second question then, and Gurmeher will come to you in a second. But first, I really want our audiences to have her philosophy very clear. Tell us, Florina ji, the tech question, because we touched on this for a second, but I want us to deep dive. The tech question, are you okay with phones in classrooms, or do you think it's certain kind of tech that is okay in classrooms? Certain kind of tech belongs outside. Is that how you think of it?
So, if you're talking about phones in classroom, yes, it's up to the teacher how she uses the different modes of technology in the class. But besides all of this, tech moderation is what is very, very important. So whether or not you use mobile phones in the classroom, and I have used them very fruitfully in the classroom,
Wow.
but moderation is the key.
So you
And
have
that
to
is,
tell us,
yes.
what does it mean to use it in a fruitful manner? Can you tell us what it looks like to integrate it? An example?
For example, you can conduct various surveys and you have various assessments that can be done. So mobile phones can be used, or technology can be used in a very engaging manner. In fact, it keeps the class engaged. It keeps the children more interested. It also ensures that the teacher is very interesting in her teaching methodology. So in that sense, we have to use technology.
Okay, so can you also very quickly, before we go over to other guests, can you just touch on a one concrete example? So for example, a subject matter, a story, something you were trying to impart to your students where you felt that actually, doing this through the phone was the right way to go about it.
Well, we can use various videos. There are various apps that can be used. There are quizzes that can be given out to students and to check the teaching learning that has been done. And those are ways in which, you can use technology in the classroom. So it's more of a hybrid way of teaching learning that goes on.
Okay, let me understand now. Let's bring in Gurmeher for just a second. Gurmeher, tell us a little bit right now about the approach that you adopt at Arpa River Valley International. Are you more particular about phones not being allowed inside classrooms? Sure, because that's a lot of schools in India. But are you also particular about students not using phones when they go home? How do you moderate that? What does that look like? What's your philosophy? Tell us everything.
Right. So I think to start with, what is first to be understood is the fact that children nowadays, nevertheless, even if we want them to or don't want them to, they do go back homes to screens, and that is pretty accessible to them. And so our school, we primarily run on this assumption that since they have screens and technology and the internet back home, let them give something that they cannot have back home, which will be a classroom environment, a teacher who answers their question, a classroom that they can sit in, a chalk and board that they can study from. And so we necessarily believe in what we did start off, which was primarily tech moderation instead of not only banning technology or fully embracing it, but coming into a point where we understand the technology can be tomorrow, but we cannot forget the irreplaceable today that these traditional methods belong to.
So I actually want to point out, Gurmeher, neither you nor Florina, of course you are not, but Gurmeher, you also are not actually anti-tech. Right, you're both saying adopt a smart approach in a sense. I think where on the scale, that tech use should be stopped is, I think, where there's a seemingly difference. But really, you both are pro the fact that tech is already a part of our future. We need to adopt it.
Right.
So I appreciate that. Florina, if we could come back to you to understand a little bit more on how you adopt tech. So the tricky part with tech is, of course, the fact that tech in itself as a hard tool can be implemented inside classrooms. But social media, that's the other aspect to this entire story. That's where we really, seem to all align that social media can be a harmful thing. Do you have a different view there? First, let me ask you.
So social media definitely can be harmful when you live by social media as the reality. And this is where we make our children aware about the harmful effects of social media. At the same time, what is the best way to use it? To promote yourself, to promote your abilities. There are various platforms where we get our senior children more engaged in. I think what we need to teach our children is, what to project to the world, because social media has a very wide reach, and what to refrain from. I think that is what we train our children. You cannot ban it completely. At the same time, we also train our parents to be more aware of what the children are posting and which social media sites they are on.
Okay, let me ask Gurmeher, let me take to you a trickier question built off what Florina has just said. Gurmeher, tell me this. When it comes to social media usage in particular, there's some that argue that, look, today's kids are not what we were when we were younger. So when we were younger, maybe we had to be told how to talk, who to talk to, who not to talk to online, stranger danger, for example. But the argument that I often hear today's parents make, is that today's kids are actually smart. Today's kids already know kinse dur rehna hai, kinse nahi dur rehna. And it's because they're not only on social media. Kids today are on Discord servers where they're often talking to other gamers for hours online. And in those conversations, they already know who's creepy, who's not creepy. Gurmeher, is that something you agree with, or do you think that's a simplified view and parents need to be careful?
I think that's too oversimplified of a view to hold, because at the helm of affairs, you have to understand that these are children who are biologically really young, whose minds haven't matured as much as we think they have, or as much as they think they have. And so there is definitely a need for there being some censorship from their parents or some control from their elders into what they are seeing and what they are going through. Absolutely, when they go into these Discord servers or social media, their mind tends to start learning and training. But is that the right learning and the right training that they should be having at that point of time, at that point of age? Are these the right experiences that they must be seeing? A 10 or 12-year-old, is it right for him to listen to people abusing so much, or for him to be called names, or for him to be indirectly bullied on the cyber web while they enter the Discord server? That is the more important question that we have to answer. Should they at all be exposed to something like this, and what effect will this have in the future when they do become adults, and then they understand that this is the form of life that they have been trained and experienced through, and start giving it back?
Okay, so I want to ask you, Gurmeher, I agree with you, but I do want to ask you, some will argue that, look, real life is exactly like that. You cannot protect, and you especially cannot overprotect. You need kids to go out there, you need kids to learn. Now, I agree with you, Gurmeher, that even though, yes, we need kids to learn, there need to be some steps in place. So, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old on the internet, not a good idea. A 13-year-old may be maturer. But that's where I want to ask Gurmeher, those are boundaries that have changed over time, right? For you and me, it's easy to say this, but there was a time when parents thought कि 16 से नीचे किसी को phone के पास नहीं जाना चाहिए. Social media should just not be allowed. So that's what I want to ask you, Gurmeher. A, what are the firm boundaries that you have in place at the school? The firm boundaries when it comes to technology. And how did you decide what those boundaries should be? So 13, 15, 12.
Ma'am, I think the issue is not technology in itself, but it is primarily of how it is used.
Sure.
So let me get back to where we started and where this question started.
Yeah.
So it is true that the boundaries of age span and the boundaries of what can be done, what cannot be done on a biological level have changed with time.
Right.
The both of us and of course Surina ma'am have seen the shift coming through all through. But
Right.
we still need to understand that putting up to an age or putting one biological age to digital exposure or to exposure on these lines may just be more harming than useful, because then you start putting children in one slab or one pedestal,
Fair.
irrespective of what is it that they truly are capable of. Now, having understood that, we need to understand that social media inherently is not bad. There is a reason that the world is moving towards becoming a global village and all of that exposure coming through. But we need to understand that the kind of exposure, as I said earlier, the kind of exposure that these children have must hence and always be fettered to some extent. In our school necessarily, our parents are told to actively discourage students from entering into the social media space apart from their supervision up until a certain age. We've put that age to be somewhere close to 5th or 6th. You make it about 12 or 13-year-old students. Why we have done it is because in our school we have seen children moving on both ends of the horizon because of their exposure to these things. We are seeing if you may call it more mature notorious activities from children of younger classes nowadays, and that comes through from their exposure of social media. And that is what they say. That is what they say. That is not what we analyze it to be generally. And then that brings us to what we are here today for. That should there be unfettered and such reliance on technology? And I ended by saying what I started with. Technology in itself is not harmful. It is how we use it, and it is how it should be used. That is what matters.
Right, but Gurmeher, I don't think that is being debated anymore. Like, I think the fact that you both came in and said this, for me, already shows that this is no longer a debate. We're already in a post-tech society, one could say, one way in which tech is,
Right.
is a very happy part of our lives. I think the more interesting question now becomes, how do we define, how do we set up boundaries? Are boundaries the right way to approach this conversation at all? These are the interesting and I think tricky questions. So let me go over to Florina to ask you. Florina, can you tell our audiences, earlier, so let's again talk about 20 years ago when kids were in school, Blackberries had come onto the market. iPhones
Right.
iPhones came later, but let's just talk about Blackberries. So kids had this world in which they could communicate with each other, and teachers didn't know ho kya raha tha. For teachers, it was a second-hand thing. You had to have a phone, you had to maybe take a student's phone, read that student's phone, and then you had access. Okay, 10 years post that, you had Facebook, you had social media, and at that point, you could actually go access the link. So you as a teacher could go see on a wall what's written. But my point is that constant fight of secrecy and not secrecy. What's going on in a student's life? That delay in you guys coming to know what's happening. How do you overcome that? Because you said you're pro-tech. You're pro-moderated tech usage, sure, but you are pro-tech.
Right.
So how do you and the other teachers within your school, because you're of course the principal, how do you tell teachers to keep a tab, and how does it not border on surveillance? That's the key question there.
Well, the first thing is, if you say keep a tab, that's something that I would refrain from, because then you are policing
Yes.
students, and that makes them smarter and then makes them more secretive. At the same time, there are still so many apps and so many ways that they can mask their presence and not make them seen. So what we do is we keep an openness for the students to come and speak with us. And that is why we've known about the troubles that some of them have faced on social media. We've come to know about any cyberbullying or what a child is facing. And then that begins our open conversations, one to one, with a group, with an entire class. Also involving parents when they need to be involved so that they know about it. So that's what we do follow.
I love that.
Um, but we also have teachers who are friends, let's say, with some of the students on social media. So they are open to see some of the posts. But you do know there are some groups that are very secretive and you can't enter that. So
Okay.
I always know students are one step ahead of
Smarter,
us.
and they always will be. They are younger, they will
Yes.
always know what the tech is. And I appreciate your approach that, policing surveillance is the wrong approach. We need to be their friend.
Right.
But can I complicate this a little and ask you, Florina? When we say that it is teachers who should be friends, teachers should give advice, I just want to ask you, as a principal, how do you make sure that the advice the teachers are giving is actually mature, open advice? It isn't slut shaming young students, for example. And I only ask you such a serious question because often it can be different sets of morals and different sets of values, a younger
Right.
generation and older generation. So how do you as a principal make sure that every teacher's advice is, lives up to the values that maybe your school would want to espouse?
The reason I can manage that, because we work as a team. We don't work in isolation. When there is a particular problem or issue that is brought to us, it's discussed as a team with the counseling team also along. And that's how we discuss how we manage this particular issue. How do we handle a student without shaming the students? Because reprimanding is not the right way to go about solving a problem. It's about making the child more aware of the problem that they have landed themselves in or may land themselves into, and how best to get themselves out of it. So that's how it's an entire connection. It's not one teacher handling the problem, but the entire team along with the counseling team. That's important.
Okay, I appreciate that because that's always, I think, the question that I have on my mind. Gurmeet, if I could come to you to ask you closing words here. We've spoken a lot about tech and we've talked a lot about in the last few minutes the beautiful advantages to being friends with your students, friends with the tech too, and just sort of embracing the fact that in today's day and age, we are where we are. But in 2 years even, where AI is going to take technology, what it's going to do to classrooms and learning, we can't predict. So it's important to embrace. I just want to ask you, Gurmeet, keeping to that question, are you possibly rethinking keeping screens out of classrooms?
Right. So I think, ma'am, I'll answer that question to you in 2 points. My first approach of answer will be where we stand today is not a place where I have no screens in my school. I think in the opening presentation of this show, you mentioned something called the Waldorf school method.
Yes.
What the Waldorf school
Yeah.
method does is it does not have zero screens, but it has only 6 computers in a computer lab, or very few MacBook Airs
Right.
all around the campus, or it is like they allow mobile phones
In a
only in
limited
breaks.
manner, right.
Absolutely. So they are not really banning technology, but they're trying to moderate it to the right ways that they go forward with, and that will bring me to I think what my appropriate or what my ideal classroom would look like, right? So I think for me the ideal classroom will neither be fully tech driven nor completely tech
So you're
free.
not,
It will be a
let
very
me make my question into just one sentence then. You're not loosening your hold on moderation anytime soon and on control anytime soon.
absolutely. I think so. I think so. I would like to think so, because you see there are innate abilities of writing notes to enhance memories, or of
Right,
reading
we talked,
physical
okay.
books to improve focus, or to engage in lively discussions around classroom and enhance your face-to-face social skills. All of these will always be present. I cannot think of a technological time where there is no human to interact with and it is just screens that you're teaching with. Where are the teachers then? What is it that the school is giving to a child if it is technology that they can get back home to?
Right.
There
I
has
mean,
to be something.
we didn't, Florina, I wanted to ask you this, that, do attention spans, do you see them falling because of tech, because of screens? We've run out of time now, so unfortunately we won't be able to touch on this. But Gurmeher, Florina, thank you. I know I can see, Florina, I can see you, almost beginning to answer the question, but we have run out of time. All right, thank you both so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you
for
so
telling us a
much.
little bit about what your classrooms
Thank you
are
so
like.
much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're going to head into a quick break. On the other side, we're shifting tracks entirely. The Oscars just took place yesterday, and it is such a huge day for India in an interesting manner. Usually after the Oscars, we talk, for example, about the big Indian wins. Today's Indian win is a special one, but one not too many people know about. Mehrotra heads DNEG. Double negative. DNEG is how they've been called in the last few years. And they have designed the beautiful special effects that you see in Dune Part 2. And it's not just that, they have 8 Oscars. So this is their 8th Oscar win. They've been creating beautiful creations for Hollywood over the last few years. They actually even created Brahmastra, so not just Hollywood. And we interview Namit about what it takes to build a VFX powerhouse on the other side of the break.
यहाँ और we late? A little bit late?
No, we are just on time.
Great. Okay. Так ми не робимо ніяких кроків назад.
We are not making any steps back. This is our policy, to be consistent regardless of what happened before. We are constructive. If we agreed that a minerals deal with the US will be signed, from our side, we are ready to sign. I honestly think the United States will be ready as well. Maybe they need time to analyze some things.
Час проаналізувати якісь речі. Я думаю, що наші відносини будуть продовжені.
I think our relations with the US will continue because this is more than relations during a certain moment. We must be open. Ukraine is not the biggest country in the world, but everyone can see how it fights for its independence and freedom.
Всі бачать, як вона бореться за свою незалежність і свободу. Якщо президент Сполучених Штатів Америки запросить мене,
If the President of the United States of America will invite me for a constructive dialogue, I represent the interests of a country that heavily depends on support from partners. So, of course, if I'm invited for a constructive dialogue for solving real problems, for serious questions and real resolute actions and answers, I will be there out of respect for America, American people, the President and the two parties.
реальних рішучих дій і відповідей я буду. Через повагу до Америки, до американського народу, і до президента, і до двох партій.
Some European leaders offered support to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and some urged diplomatic repair after an extraordinary clash at the White House with U.S. President Donald Trump.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Trump threatened to withdraw support for Ukraine 3 years after Russia's invasion.
We gave you military equipment.
A new era of wickedness has begun, said German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, who urged Germany to release an additional $3.1 billion in aid for Ukraine. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Saturday greeted Zelensky with a warm embrace in front of a London crowd.
Well, let me just say that you're very, very welcome here in Downing Street.
The pair sat down for talks ahead of a summit of European leaders that Zelensky will attend on Sunday to discuss a peace plan for Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron spoke to both Zelensky and Trump on Saturday and in an interview called for calm. Macron said Zelensky had told him he was willing to restore dialogue with the United States, including on a deal giving U.S. access to revenues from Ukraine's natural resources. But Macron did not say what Trump told him. NATO chief Mark Rutte said Zelensky needs to find a way to restore his relationship with Trump after the, quote, unfortunate spat.
And I gave you javelins.
Rutte said he told Zelensky, quote, we really...
Welcome back to the Breakfast Club. We're so excited to bring you our next guest. It is the absolute coolest. Filmmaker Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. You might remember it dominated box offices when it released in India and globally. And it's also just yesterday conquered the Oscars. The film has breathtaking visuals, deserts, gorgeous sandworms, and everything was crafted actually by an Indian VFX powerhouse, DNEG. They've secured yet another Academy Award in the Best Visual Effects category yesterday for Dune Part 2. And this actually marks the Mumbai-based company's 8th Oscar win. We're so excited because yesterday, after the win, we were actually able to sit down and chat with Mehrotra. He's the CEO of DNEG, and we asked him all about how an Indian company became a global powerhouse in this manner. Take a look. To break down for us what it takes to create that kind of magic, we have with us a very special guest here on CNN News 18, Namit Mehrotra. He's the CEO of DNEG. He joins us this morning to tell us a little bit more. Namit, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your win. It was really lovely actually to read some of your interviews in the run-up in the last few weeks to see that, you were confident. There did seem to be a sense that Dune 2 would clinch this win. Can you just walk us through what it takes to create everything we see in something like Dune Part 2, something like the sandworms, something we couldn't have imagined? Walk us through the steps involved right from the storyboard to actually seeing it in well, not in real life, but as we see it.
Oh, it's great to be here, and it is an incredibly exciting time. I think it's fair to say that, as an Indian company now, we've had 7 Oscar wins in the last 10 years, which I think is a sort of record in itself in the world, even though we've won 8 totally. But, to say that we won 7 Oscars in 10 years is a pretty, heartwarming feat, and so that is absolutely gratifying. I think, Dune, in terms of its standard of, storytelling, the way it integrates cinematography, production design, visual effects, special effects, and into a very immersive narrative is really at the heart of why it's so unique. In fact, when the Dune Part 1 had got the Oscar, I had spoken to people and said, there will be a conversation in our industry that says life before Dune and after Dune, because we had already managed to create such a great standard in that seamless storytelling where you actually feel like you've transported yourself in that world and you're experiencing it. The question around, how those sandworms and those are created, I think it always starts with the vision of the director. Without that, frankly, there is no filmmaking, there is no film. So, Denis' vision is absolutely, breathtaking. It's our 3rd Oscar with him, and what we've had consistently in all our interactions with him is someone who comes with a very clear imagination of what he's trying to create and how it really embodies itself into the story. And what that basically then starts to do is it starts to put all the various creative departments at work, where we work incredibly collaboratively. There's a lot of R&D, there's a lot of testing that happens in terms of how that interaction of the sandworm will happen with the environment. What kind of light are we sort of looking at? What sort of characters are going to be experiencing when they're on that sandworm? So there's a lot of detail that goes into construction on each and every frame that you see, and that's why you get to see such a breathtaking output. So it takes months and sometimes years of work to really get there.
It's a slightly technical question, Namit, but can you tell us, under VFX is a whole umbrella, right? And under that are multiple different kinds of effects. Tell us something like CGI. Obviously, many have talked about, this debate of is there too much CGI, too little CGI. Just tell us a little bit about, for your team, when you're deciding how a visual effect should be deployed, what kind of visual effect should be deployed, whether it should be CGI, whether AI should play a part, because that's a whole other argument. What's that process like?
So basically, AI is also part of CGI, because if you think about it, CGI stands for computer generated imagery. And what we're saying is that what will be shot practically, what will be miniature, what will be CGI, it's a combination of all of those different facets of, filmmaking that come together. And that is sort of where, it's a very collaborative process, because clearly there are some things that cannot be shot, that cannot be created, and therefore CGI has that ability to do something that is not practically done in physical terms. But how do you integrate that seamlessly is critical, because you're watching, an entire sequence, you're watching a story, you're watching a journey of a character, and the CGI is meant to enhance that story. It's not meant to take you away and make you feel, oh wow, that was cool, and then you kind of lose connection or semblance to what is happening. So it's very important to actually understand what is it exactly that the filmmaker has in mind. Like, what is the emotion they're trying to tell you? What is the journey of the character? Like, what is the character feeling that you're translating into a visual moment? And all of that really plays a real part in defining or using different facets of or different tools, as we say, to get the best outcome.
Okay, Namit, we're going to ask you 2 more questions, then we'll let you go. Can you just tell us a little bit? Our audiences may not know, because we're talking about these big budget Hollywood films, many of which have notched Oscars, but there's also Brahmastra. And DNEG also played a huge role in making Brahmastra a reality. What was that experience like? Just bring us that parallel of the Indian film industry, because today we've talked so much about what it's like to create in Hollywood. But just bring us that parallel for a second.
Yeah, so I think, it's sort of no different in many ways. It's just that obviously there's a certain amount of money or a certain history of what they've used that technology and those tools for. So when, again, a Brahmastra comes along, it's Ayan Mukherjee's singular vision to really create something that is of a certain stature and scale. And we got involved at the very, very beginning to, again, start to design and to sort of really integrate, how we can bring his vision to life in a way that I think was unique for the Indian film industry to sort of start to use this level of technology. And that sort of is why, again, Brahmastra, for its own budgets and timelines, really set the benchmark of high quality Indian visual effects, because again you saw it being used a lot more seamlessly. You never really felt taken out of the story or taken out of the film, and the visual effects were embedded into how the characters were sort of responding to it. So that sort of is, obviously a lot of people worked on it. Brahmastra had a lot of visual effects. And and I think it produced a pretty good outcome.
So for many people watching, the fact that DNEG is, you've got such a huge Indian team that has created this, obviously working in collaboration with multiple international leaders. But just talk to us about that, the fact that this is Indian in so many ways, so inherently Indian, the fact that we're seeing this out of India, one city in India. Just talk us through that creative process.
No, I think, I've sort of finished 30 years in the business now. And, it was a very long ambition of mine to sort of put India on the map. And that's where the journey really started, in really believing in the artistry and the capability of Indian talent. And what we were missing for the longest time was that technology or that training, which is really what, we sort of were able to, through the acquisition of DNEG and other companies, we were able to bring in and make it available to our people in India. And therefore, that has really resulted in our ability to now seamlessly work on just about all these Oscars that have been won, where it's impossible to say what was done in India, what was done in the West, and that is a true success that we are always striving for. That it's the fact that we don't have to say India can or cannot do this and that only the West or the East can do, automatically means that we are working as one global entity, really delivering the best for the world, whether it's Hollywood or India.
I love that thought. Okay, Namit, if we could ask you, for any young VFX designers who are watching today and want to know what you think about the future of the industry, where it's headed, but also just your words of inspiration to a younger creator who's watching, what would they be?
So I think, at the heart, you have to be a storyteller. You have to really want to express yourself. The tools of visual effects are no different than, it's an artistic form of expression. So at your heart, you must have the desire to really have that passion to communicate and to show something and that is sort of where visual effects is, like I said, it's a form of expression for an artist. And that sort of is at the key to really sort of drive your motivation. And then you obviously learning a little bit more about the technical craft and the processes that happen in really being able to create that is how you get to a level of Dune. But the journey is no different. It's every artist goes through a similar journey. And my recommendation to every young artist is that if you can dream it, you can do it. This is the world today does not distinguish between the West and the East. We've created great success out of India, and And I still feel we're at the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to come. So, the opportunity and the motivation to really excel is huge. So just fuel your ambition and passion and make it happen.
Okay, awesome. Let's take you now from that to stories that are taking place from India across the world. We're taking you to stories like the PE companies being built in India to the Egyptian sands. Take a look first at what's taking place right here in India as growth PE stage companies are seeing traction from private equity venture capital investors. It's an early trend and we'll talk a little bit more about what it represents in just a little bit right here on the show. But it'll mitigate risk amid market uncertainties. Data released by research firm Venture Intelligence estimates that growth PE stage companies have doubled their PE VC investments to nearly 1.1 billion in Jan and Feb of CY 2025 against 594 million during the same period last year. And let's talk a little bit about India's logistics and warehousing sector because it's rapidly evolving due to supportive policies, infrastructure upgrades and technological advancements. Particularly notable is 12 emerging Tier 2-3 cities bolstered by government initiatives like 10,000 crore annual urban infrastructure development funds. And we take you to news about India's retail market that has soared to 82 lakh crores in 2024 from 35 lakh crores in 2014. Driven by economic growth and diverse consumer bases, the market is set to reach over 190 lakh crores by 2034. Retailers are needing to navigate varied demographics and consumer behaviors. Okay, post that, let's take you now to grand celebrations being held at an ashram situated in Mathura. These are grand Holi celebrations. People played the Holi of flowers, laddus and latmar and colours. And a two-day camel race kicking off in Egypt on Wednesday with participants from Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, alongside different tribes from across Egypt. Camel racing returns to this Egyptian desert festival after a 5-year hiatus. Organizers say they were keen to support the Camel Festival after a 5-year hiatus. They said it's important, obviously, to attract camel racing enthusiasts to watch this. Obviously, some have had concerns over animal rights there, but what you're looking at right now is revelers in the Brazilian town of São Caetano in Odivelas, located in the Amazon, celebrating the Sunday Carnival by exalting their local traditions. People wear colorful clothes, masks and bull suits, part of typically representing bulls. This is the Boa de Mascara festivities. Boa Festival represents bulls and other local folklore characters. It brings together indigenous African and Portuguese traditions. And next, one of Hong Kong's most historic theatres, the Sunbeam, is closing its doors for the last time on Tuesday. Thousands of Cantonese opera fans gathering to bid farewell to this iconic venue and what it gave Hong Kong. On Monday, the theatre staged its last ever performance to a full house. After the show, theatre operator Edward Lee hosted a farewell ceremony attended by audience members. Theatre lights switched off at 12:15, marking the end of an era as the shutters were pulled down. And right after the Oscars, there's still one exciting event that takes place. It's the Vanity Fair Oscar Party 2025. It's the place where you get to see newsmakers from the entire year come together on the red carpet, and they're usually wearing cutting-edge fashions, because this is not just the Oscar winners, the Oscar nominees, it's other people. So people from the political life, people from the comedy scene, all of them who will come together on the red carpet. And this is a breakdown of everything some of the stars of the music world, the comedy world, the business world all chose to wear on this red carpet. Shosha brings you the lowdown. Take a look.
Looks like the Oscars 2025 red carpet was just the warm-up. The real fashion drama unfolded at the Vanity Fair Oscar party as stars turned up the heat with looks that screamed glamour and just the right amount of after-party mischief. Megan Thee Stallion did not come to play. She came to slay. Bringing her signature hot girl energy to the Vanity Fair Oscar party, she rocked a jaw-dropping petal green gown with feather details and a daring open chest. Subtle? Never heard of her. Selena Gomez is deep in her glam era, and she is not letting up. She slipped into a slinky sequined Armani number that hugged her like a dream. And her signature brown smoky eyes and nude lips, effortless radiance. Winning the red carpet game twice in one night, just a casual queen move. Sydney Sweeney turned heads in a dazzling pink Miu Miu number, complete with a flowing train and a keyhole neckline. The Euphoria star continues to prove that she and Miu Miu are an unbeatable fashion duo. Cynthia Erivo gave us ethereal drama in a draped tulle mini dress complete with pearl and ribbon embellishments. A look so dreamy, it deserves its own Oscar. Camila Cabello took the risque route in a mustard yellow gown with daring cutouts, bringing sultry sophistication to the Vanity Fair bash. Girlie sure knows how to slay. Zoe Kravitz went for a classic front, but the back, total plot twist. A peekaboo surprise that proved less is definitely more. Kendall Jenner turned the Vanity Fair Oscar party into her personal runway. Stepping out in a vintage muggler lace gown straight from the archives of the Spring-Summer 1992 collection. Talk about a fashion history moment. And of course, Julia Fox made an entrance as always in a sheer masterpiece, channeling Botticelli's Venus in a way only she could pull off. From vintage showstoppers to bold fits, Vanity Fair Oscar Party 2025 was a full-on fashion fantasy. So, who won the after-party best dressed crown?
Alright, and we're shifting focus right now to something entirely different as India faces a tough challenge against Australia in the Champions Trophy semi-final. They're aiming to break their ICC knockout stage jinx, and despite missing key pacers, Australia does remain dangerous. Remember, they recently chased 352 against England. India has a spin-heavy strategy. It was something that was initially doubted, but it has actually been highly effective on Dubai's slower pitches. Now, we want to bring you this breakdown. Take a look of what there is to look forward to.
India will face a significant challenge as they aim to overcome their knockout stage struggles against Australia in the Champions Trophy semi-final on Tuesday. Despite Australia's key players like Pat Cummins, Josh Hazlewood and Mitchell Starc being absent, the Aussies remain formidable in global tournaments. Their impressive chase of 352 against England in Lahore recently is a stark reminder of what they are capable of. India's last victory, however, over Australia in an ICC knockout match was in the 2011 World Cup quarter-final. Since then, India has faced heartbreaks in the 2015 ODI World Cup semi-finals, the 2023 ODI World Cup final and the 2023 World Test Championship final. However, this Indian team is optimistic about changing that narrative largely due to their strong spin attack. The decision to include 5 spinners in the squad, initially criticized, has proven effective on Dubai's slow pitches. The Indian spinners have adapted their techniques to suit the conditions, focusing on patience rather than aggressive turn. Varun Chakravarti, the star performer against New Zealand, noted that the pitch offers slight deviations, creating doubt for the batters. In their match against New Zealand, the Indian spin quartet of Chakravarti, Kuldeep Yadav, Ravindra Jadeja and Akshar Patel took 9 wickets and delivered a stunning 128 dot balls in 39 overs, stifling the Kiwi batters. In contrast, Australia relies on Adam Zampa as their primary spinner, with part-timers Glenn Maxwell and Travis Head providing support. The absence of key bowlers has been felt, as seen in the matches against England and Afghanistan. Matthew Short has been ruled out of the tournament with a calf injury, and it has also robbed the already creaking Australian bowling unit of a handy spin bowling option. Short picked up a quad injury against Afghanistan and would not have had the time to recover for the knockout matches. With that, 21-year-old Cooper Conley, left-hand batter and a left-arm spinner, has been called up to the main squad. But if the selectors opt for a like-for-like replacement, Jake Fraser-McGurk will be their best choice. But if they seek a specialist spin bowler, they may have to tweak their bowling attack and bring in Tanveer Sangha. For India, with the success they enjoyed with the ball against New Zealand, it will make little sense to change their playing 11 for the semi-final fixture unless there is an injury concern. While Rohit Sharma is yet to fire big, his speedy starts at the top has allowed Shubman Gill to settle and Virat Kohli as well. Against the Kiwis, the Indian middle order was tested and they came out with flying colours. Indian batters including Kohli, Rohit Sharma, Shreyas Iyer and Gill will be eager to capitalise on the familiar conditions as well. But Rohit Sharma has emphasised the importance of focusing on their game plan against a historically strong Australian side. Remember, the semi-final will be India's first ODI encounter with Australia since the 2023 World Cup final in this very format. A win would secure India's place in the Champions Trophy final for their third consecutive edition. Historically, India has a good record against Australia in the Champions Trophy with 2 wins out of 4 matches, and they will look to extend the record and make their third successive Champions Trophy final in Dubai.
All right, and let's now dip into the world of finance powered by Money Control Pro. We are now going to bring you a special section on financial markets. Money Control, remember, is India's premium destination for investing and business insights. Let's take a look first at a market overview. GIFT Nifty indicating a weak opening for Indian stock markets. US stock markets closed lower on Monday as the US president pressed ahead with tariffs on Canada and Mexico and suspended military support to Ukraine. So there's a lot of nervousness. Asian stock markets dropped Tuesday morning, the tracking losses in the same US markets. Gold prices are steady amid uncertain macroeconomic geopolitical outlook. Let's take a look at one sector in particular. In fact, we'll take a look at an improving macroeconomic landscape that should drive possibly the housing finance industry's growth. A majority of this growth is expected to come from the affordable housing segment. Government initiatives, schemes to accelerate demand in this segment continue, and players are seeking to grow the business by using tech to widen reach and to keep a check on asset quality. You can log into Money Control Pro to find out more about the affordable housing finance industry in India and various other actionable insights on the markets. It's the premier destination for all investing views and financial insights that you're ever going to need, brought to you by Money Control. We're going to be heading into a quick break. On the other side, more of everything that's taking place on the Breakfast Club. We're leaving you with the visuals we think you should take with you through the rest of the day. So do stay with us.
We late? A little bit late?
No, we are just on time.
Great. Okay. Так ми не робимо ніяких кроків назад.
We are not making any steps back. This is our policy to be consistent regardless of what happened before. We are constructive. If we agreed that a minerals deal with the US will be signed, from our side, we are ready to sign. I honestly think the United States will be ready as well. Maybe they need time to analyze some things.
Час проаналізувати якісь речі. Я думаю, що наші відносини будуть продовжені.
I think our relations with the US will continue because this is more than relations during a certain moment. We must be open. Ukraine is not the biggest country in the world, but everyone can see how it fights for its independence and freedom.
Всі бачать, як вона бореться за свою незалежність і свободу. Якщо президент Сполучених Штатів Америки запросить мене,
If the President of the United States of America will invite me for a constructive dialogue, I represent the interests of a country that heavily depends on support from partners. So of course, if I'm invited for a constructive dialogue for solving real problems, for serious questions and real resolute actions and answers, I will be there out of respect for America, American people, the President and the two parties.
реальних рішучих дій і відповідей я буду. Через повагу до Америки, до американського народу, і до президента, і до двох партій.
Some European leaders offered support to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and some urged
Welcome back. We're almost at the end of the Breakfast Club, and this is the time when we leave you typically with a video or a set of videos, visuals that we hope stay with you through the rest of the day. Let's take you right now to snowfall that's hit Lahore and Spiti. This is after 2 days of sunshine. The weather actually deteriorated again in several parts of Himachal. And deterioration usually means lots and lots of gorgeous snowfall, as you can see. Mystical, magical winterlands created by the afternoon, snow falling in Lahore and Spiti and Manali as well. Tourists have been advised against travel. Obviously, there is that avalanche risk. Class 10, 12 exams have also been postponed for young students. So as parts of India are seeing hotter temperatures, Lahore, Spiti seeing a winter throwback. And then the other visual we're going to take you to from there now. Let's take you to the other side of the world altogether. Look at those gorgeous visuals coming in. Thousands and thousands of Samba troop members swinging into the spotlight. Rio de Janeiro's Samba Drome. This is the carnival's third night. Remember, the carnival is in full swing right now in Brazil. Just look at those gorgeous visuals. All right, we hope they stay with you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Brought to you by.
We late? A little bit late?
No, we are just on time.
Great. Okay. Так, ми не робимо ніяких кроків назад.
We are not making any steps back. This is our policy to be consistent regardless of what happened before. We are constructive. If we agreed that a minerals deal with the US will be signed, from our side, we are ready to sign. I honestly think the United States will be ready as well. Maybe they need time to analyze some things.
Час проаналізувати якісь речі. Я думаю, що наші відносини будуть продовжені.
I think our relations with the US will continue because this is more than relations during a certain moment. We must be open. Ukraine is not the biggest country in the world, but everyone can see how it fights for its independence and freedom.
Всі бачать, як вона бореться за свою незалежність і свободу. Якщо президент Сполучених Штатів Америки запросить мене,